There's a specific kind of stuck that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You're sitting there. The task is clear. You know what needs to be done. Maybe it's something simple. Maybe it's something important. Either way, you can feel it waiting. And yet, you don't begin. You don't feel lazy. You feel blocked. You think about starting. You imagine yourself doing it. You tell yourself you should care more, try harder, focus better. But nothing shifts. Minutes pass. Sometimes hours. And by the end of it, you're not just behind, you're disappointed in yourself. That disappointment is often louder than the task itself. Most people label this as procrastination. They assume it's avoidance or lack of discipline. But if you look closely at your own experience, it doesn't feel like you're avoiding because you don't care. It feels like you care too much. And that's part of the problem. When something matters, it gains weight. And sometimes the reason you can't start isn't because you don't want to. It's because the task has become heavier than it looks. We often call this executive dysfunction, but stripped of labels, the lived experience is simpler. You know what to do, but the act of beginning feels disproportionately difficult. The mistake most people make is thinking this is about effort. So they apply more pressure. They tell themselves to stop being dramatic, to just sit down and do it, to push through. But pressure increases weight, and weight is what's already holding you in place. Think about what happens internally before you start. The task isn't just write the email or study the chapter or make the call. It becomes layered. What if it's not good enough? What if you forget something? What if this exposes that you're not as capable as people think you are? What if you try and it's mediocre? Suddenly, the first step isn't neutral anymore, it's charged. And when something feels charged, your body reacts. Not dramatically, not in panic, just in subtle resistance, a tightening, a hesitation, a delay. That hesitation is easy to misinterpret as laziness. But laziness feels indifferent. This feels tense. There's a difference. You may notice that you can do difficult things under pressure. You can meet deadlines when they're urgent. You can handle crises. You can show up for other people. But when it comes to initiating certain personal tasks, especially ones tied to identity, performance, or self-evaluation, you stall. That inconsistency feels confusing. But it makes sense if you look at it through one lens. Emotional weight. The more meaning attached to a task, the harder it can be to begin. If a task is low stakes, you move through it easily. If it feels like it says something about you, about your competence, intelligence, or worth, the starting point feels exposed. Beginning means risking proof. As long as you don't start, the outcome is undefined. Possibility remains intact. The moment you begin, the result becomes real. Remaining still preserves potential. Movement introduces reality, and reality can feel vulnerable. This is why the stuck feeling often intensifies around things you care about most. It's not a lack of motivation. It's the presence of fear. Subtle, often unspoken fear. Not fear of danger, fear of evaluation. Over time, especially if you've internalized messages about your potential, this weight compounds. You're capable of so much. You just need to apply yourself. Why do you wait until the last minute? Those statements don't disappear. They linger. So when you sit down to start, you're not just facing the task. You're facing expectation, your own and everyone else's. No wonder your system tightens. What looks like delay is often self-protection. If the task feels like a test of your worth, hesitation makes sense. Your mind tries to manage the emotional risk before taking action. It scans. It overthinks. It rehearses. It tries to guarantee safety. But safety and certainty rarely come first. And so you wait. You wait to feel ready. You wait to feel confident. You wait for clarity. But readiness usually follows action, not the other way around. The longer you wait for the perfect internal state, the heavier the task becomes. Because now it carries not only fear of failure, but guilt about delay. The cycle tightens. This is where shame enters. You begin to question your reliability. Why can't I just start? What's wrong with me? That self-criticism doesn't motivate you. It adds more weight. Now the task is no longer just a task. It's a referendum on your discipline. Weight increases, movement decreases. Here's the insight that shifts everything. Starting becomes hard when the first step feels like proof. Proof that you're competent. Proof that you're not. Proof that you can follow through. Proof that you can't. When beginning feels like evidence, hesitation grows. The goal then isn't to become more forceful. It's to remove the sense of proof from the first step. Not to eliminate standards, not to lower ambition, but to separate beginning from evaluation. Right now, in your mind, starting may feel like a commitment to finishing. Writing one sentence feels like agreeing to write the whole piece. Opening the file feels like signing up for the entire project. So of course you hesitate. The first move feels like a contract, but it doesn't have to be. What if beginning didn't mean committing? What if it simply meant touching the edge? There's a subtle difference between I need to complete this and I'm just going to engage with it for a moment. One carries pressure. The other carries permission. Permission softens resistance. This isn't about elaborate strategies or productivity systems. It's about emotional decoupling, allowing the first action to exist without turning it into a verdict. The reason this works isn't mechanical, it's psychological. When the first step stops feeling like a test, your body stops bracing. Bracing is what keeps you still. If you've experienced burnout, even mild, long-term mental strain, this effect is stronger. When effort has repeatedly led to depletion, your system becomes cautious. It doesn't want to spend energy without guarantee of return. So it delays, waiting for conditions to feel safer. That doesn't mean you're incapable. It means your internal bar for worth the effort has risen. And forcing yourself through that rarely rebuilds trust. It reinforces tension. Trust is rebuilt when you show yourself that beginning doesn't equal judgment. Over time, if you stop labeling the freeze as a flaw, something shifts. Instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you might pause and think, this feels heavy. Not I'm lazy. Not I'm broken. Just this feels heavy. That shift matters. Because once you identify weight instead of weakness, the response changes. You stop attacking yourself and start adjusting the conditions. The paradox is this: the more you try to overpower resistance, the stronger it becomes. The more gently you approach it, the more space opens. You don't need to convince yourself that you're capable. You already have evidence of that. You've handled complexity. You've met deadlines. You've solved problems. The stuck moments don't erase those facts. They are situational. And when you see them as situational rather than personal, the shame loosens. The next time you're sitting in that pause, aware, restless, disappointed, instead of escalating the pressure, experiment with lightness. Not as a technique, as a stance. What would this look like if it didn't have to prove anything? What would a beginning look like if it wasn't a contract with your future self? Often, it's unimpressive, quiet, small, almost forgettable. But small beginnings accumulate. Not because you forced them, because you allowed them. This isn't about becoming hyperproductive. It's about removing the emotional charge from the starting line. When starting is neutral, movement becomes possible. And when movement becomes possible, momentum eventually follows. Not from intensity, but from relief. You are not the freeze. You are someone navigating weight. And weight can be adjusted. Not through pressure, through permission. That's the difference.